The first time I saw Eric after all those years, he was standing by the glass door of our office lobby, staring up at the logo like it meant something. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, catching the crease in his collar, still sharp, like he'd ironed it just for this. The security badge clipped to his belt was temporary, white instead of blue, and it caught the light every time he shifted his weight. I remember thinking how strange it was that the guy who once mocked me for spending my nights in a classroom was now here, waiting for an interview at the company I worked for. It had been almost 8 years since college. 8 years since he used to call me Professor, laugh when I'd pack up early to make my night classes. Back then, I was the one juggling shifts at a hardware store and studying business administration after hours, while he coasted on his family's money and called it networking. We'd been part of the same friend group, those late summer barbecues, the after-game beers at Miller's Tavern, but the night classes became his favorite punchline. "Why pay to suffer when you can just live?" he'd said once, grinning across a table sticky with spilled beer. "Man, you don't need a degree to sell wrenches." I remember smiling it off, but the words sat with me. They sat with me when I clocked in at 7 the next morning, when my hands smelled like oil and metal dust, when I stared at a textbook during lunch breaks under flickering lights. I'd tell myself it didn't matter, that hard work would catch up eventually, but it's amazing how long certain voices can echo in your head. Now here he was, same sharp jawline, hair shorter, but still slicked with that expensive sheen, and for a second, I almost didn't recognize him. Not because he looked different, but because he looked uncertain. He didn't see me at first. I stood by the reception desk, pretending to check my phone while my pulse kept steadying itself. My reflection caught in the glass door beside him. He was tapping his foot, nervous maybe, or trying not to show it. The receptionist asked if he needed help, and he gave his name, Eric Nolan, here for the Operations Associate interview. I nearly laughed. Operations Associate, my department. When I finally approached, it was deliberate, slow, casual, like walking toward a ghost that doesn't yet know it's been seen. "Eric?" I said. He turned. It took him half a second longer than it should have to place me. "Adam? Holy crap." His grin broke wide, the kind that used to disarm people. "Man, I didn't know you worked here." I shrugged. "Yeah, about 6 years now." He laughed again, the sound bouncing against the glass walls. "Guess you really made something out of those night classes, huh?" It wasn't meant cruelly, not now, but something in me twisted anyway. We shook hands. His grip was still strong, practiced. "I heard this company's solid," he said. "You liking it here?" "Yeah," I said evenly. "It's steady. Good team." He nodded, glancing around at the minimalist decor, the frosted glass meeting rooms beyond the lobby. "Looks like it. I could use a place like this. Things got weird after the pandemic. Kept bouncing between contracts, you know." Did know. Because I'd watched people like him, smart talkers who never finished what they started, drift from one opportunity to another, always just shy of accountability. But I didn't say that. Instead, I smiled. "Yeah, stability's good." He didn't pick up the tone. Before I could say anything else, HR called his name. He gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, still that too familiar gesture, and followed the recruiter toward the glass conference room. As he walked, I noticed the slightest fray on the hem of his cuff. Not much, but enough to tell me life hadn't been as smooth as he made it sound. When the door shut behind him, I stood there a little longer, the hum of the ceiling lights pressing on my thoughts. I didn't expect to think about him again after that. But later that afternoon, my manager, Denise, pulled me aside. "Hey," she said, leaning on my cubicle wall. "You know this guy, Eric Nolan?" I hesitated. "Yeah, from college." She smiled faintly. "Small world. He's up for one of the open roles under you." You'd be his team lead if he's hired. Something in my stomach clicked, hard, metallic. Under me? Yeah, it's a lateral for most folks, but with your seniority and his background, it'd be a clear hierarchy. She lowered her voice, maybe sensing my reaction. We've got a few candidates. Don't worry, we'll run them all through the same panel. I nodded, trying not to look as uneasy as I felt. Of course. That night, I stayed late at my desk after everyone left. The glow from the monitors cast pale light over the room, and the city outside blinked in cold December stillness. I scrolled through the internal applicant database, found his file. Bachelor's degree in communications. No mention of any advanced training. 3 jobs in 5 years, each one shorter than the last. I could have stopped there, but curiosity pressed harder. I checked LinkedIn. He'd written strategic consultant at a firm I knew had gone under 2 years back. The endorsements were all mutual friends from college, names I hadn't thought about in ages. It wasn't that I hated him. I just couldn't shake the irony. Back then, I was the one scraping through textbooks at midnight. He was the one calling me obsessive. And now, the path he'd laughed at was the one I'd built into a career. I locked my screen, grabbed my coat, and left. Outside, the cold bit through my sleeves, sharper than I expected. I walked past the reflection of our office building's name on the glass facade, the letters glowing blue against the night sky. It didn't hit me until I reached the parking lot how much I still wanted him to remember. A week later, I was on the interview panel. HR liked having someone from the department sit in for technical rounds, so there I was, across the same conference table I'd seen him enter before. He walked in wearing a different shirt this time, dark navy, sleeves rolled. The tie looked borrowed. "Hey again," he said, smiling at me before glancing at the others. Small world. "Seems like it," I replied, nodding. The HR lead, Clara, began the formalities. I sat through the usual questions, experience, responsibilities, challenges handled. Eric answered smoothly, maybe too smoothly. He had that salesman confidence, the kind that covers gaps with charm. But when the questions turned technical, about workflow software, metrics tracking, cross-department reporting, his ease faltered. He stumbled once, twice. Caught himself with a joke. I didn't interrupt. I just watched, noting how the other panelists reacted. When it was my turn to ask, I kept my tone neutral. "Can you tell us about a time you handled a recurring performance issue on your team?" He hesitated. Sure. At my last company, one of the guys wasn't hitting his targets, so I took him out for coffee, talked it out, tried to motivate him." "And did it work?" He smiled. "Yeah, for a while. People just need a push sometimes." Denise wrote something down beside me. I leaned back, giving a small nod. Got it. The rest of the interview played out without surprises. When it ended, he gave me that old grin again. "Guess this is where you get to grade me, huh?" I smiled faintly. Something like that. After he left, the room stayed quiet a moment. Then Clara said, "Charismatic guy, but light on technical side." Denise nodded. "Agreed. Not terrible, but I don't know if he can keep up." Someone else added, "He's got leadership energy, though. Maybe in a client-facing role." They moved on to the next name. I listened. Half in and half out, my mind caught on how strange it all felt. The kid who'd made me a joke for studying late, now hoping for approval from the man who used to avoid eye contact with professors. When the meeting ended, I gathered my notes and stood by the window for a while. The city stretched gray and endless outside. I didn't root against him, not consciously. But when Denise asked later if I had any concerns, I said carefully, "He's personable, but the learning curve might be steep." She nodded. "That's fair." He didn't get the job. 2 weeks later, I saw the notification come through HR. Another candidate was selected. I didn't think much of it until the following Friday, when an email hit my inbox. Subject: Hey man, it was from Eric. Hey Adam, didn't pan out with the job, but was good seeing you. Guess those night classes paid off after all, huh? Anyway, maybe we can grab a drink sometime. Would be good to catch up. Eric. I stared at the message for a long time. The casual tone, the easy humor, it was the same old Eric. Only now it carried a shadow I couldn't quite name. I didn't reply that day, or the next. But the following week, I ran into him again, by accident. It was a Thursday night. I'd stopped by a bar near my apartment, same one I used to go to with coworkers after long shifts. The jukebox hummed low. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and old beer. And there he was, sitting at the counter, nursing a drink, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I ordered mine. Hey, he said, surprised but not unhappy. Didn't expect to see you here. Same us, I said. He gestured at the stool beside him. Sit down, man. I owe you one for letting me embarrass myself in that interview. I smirked. You didn't embarrass yourself? Oh, come on, he said, laughing. I saw your face when I blanked on that software question. You must have thought I'd never opened a spreadsheet in my life. I shrugged. We all start somewhere. He swirled his glass. Yeah, some of us just start later than others. There was something in his tone then, something like defeat. We talked for a while, about old times, mutual friends, how the world had changed. He told me he'd been freelancing, trying to pivot into something more stable. I listened, nodding, sipping slow. At one point, he said, You ever think about how we all end up where we deserve? I looked at him. You think that's how it works? He gave a half smile. Maybe. I used to think I was the smart one. Now I'm sitting here buying cheap whiskey while you're the one people call sir in meetings. The words lingered. Later that night, when I got home, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the fridge compressor kicking on in the dark felt louder than usual. I thought about him sitting there, the old arrogance stripped away, the apology buried under jokes. I didn't know then that this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. Because 3 months later, when our company opened a new division downtown, one with public-facing roles and less scrutiny, Eric Nolan applied again. Only this time, the story didn't end at an interview. The email came through late on a Monday morning. Subject line: Internal transfer, candidate review. I opened it automatically, half expecting another batch of resumes to skim. But the name at the top stopped me. Eric Nolan, Public Relations Liaison, Downtown Division. My coffee went cold beside the keyboard. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. The timestamp showed he'd submitted his application just after midnight the night before. A Sunday night, when HR systems were quiet and inboxes were empty. Maybe he thought it had slipped through unnoticed. Maybe he was hoping no one remembered his first interview. The position was different this time. The downtown division had launched fast, a smaller team handling outreach for local business clients. It wasn't technically under my department, but all project approvals still came across my desk before final onboarding. It would have been easy to ignore it. Just another candidate among dozens. But that name had a weight, a history. By lunch, I couldn't resist checking the system again. His cover letter was short, almost too casual. To whom it may concern, I've admired the company's growth and culture from the outside and hope to contribute to its next phase. My background in communications and client management aligns with the goals of the downtown division. I'm ready to bring energy and integrity to the team. Thank you for the opportunity. Eric Nolan. Energy and integrity. The words hit differently when you've known someone through years of shortcuts. That afternoon, I ran into Denise outside the conference room. She had a coffee in one hand and a folder tucked under the other. Hey, she said, saw the new round of candidates for downtown. Guess who's back? I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. She smiled. He's persistent. I'll give him that. HR's letting the division lead handle it this time, but they might loop us in for references. References? Yeah. You're technically the most recent colleague of his, according to the last interview notes. I paused. We were classmates, not coworkers. Close enough, she said, half joking, half serious. They'll probably ask you anyway. That night I walked home through cold air that smelled faintly of rain. The streets glistened under the streetlights, the sound of traffic distant but steady. It should have been easy. A simple, detached process. I wasn't HR. I didn't decide who got hired. But something about Eric's persistence gnawed at me. He wasn't just applying to the company. He was circling it, like a man knocking on a door he swore he'd never need to walk through. And I kept hearing his voice from that bar night. Some of us just start later than others. A week passed. No word. I figured it was over again. Then, during a Wednesday team meeting, Denise cleared her throat. Quick update, she said, scrolling through her notes. Downtown Division's bringing on a few new hires. Eric Nolan, you might remember him, Adam, got the PR liaison role. They're onboarding him next Monday. It took effort to keep my face neutral. Guess persistence pays off, someone joked. Apparently, Denise replied. After the meeting, I sat at my desk, staring at the spreadsheet open on my monitor. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. More unsettled. The office world was small, and the thought of crossing paths with him again, even tangentially, stirred something old. Still, I told myself to let it go. Different department, different location. But life has a way of testing whether you really mean it when you say, let it go. The first time we had to collaborate was 2 months later. The downtown division needed budget sign-off for a marketing initiative, and my department handled approvals. The email thread landed in my inbox late Friday afternoon. From Eric Nolan. Subject, proposal approval. Downtown PR campaign. Hey Adam, not sure if this goes straight to you or someone else, but we've got a client outreach proposal that needs your department's sign-off. Funny, running into each other again, huh? Guess life's got jokes. Appreciate your time. Promise I'll make it easy on you this round. Eric. I read it twice. His tone hadn't changed. Still that mix of charm and deflection, a touch of humor to mask the ask. The attached document was rough. Half-polished slides, vague cost justifications, and a timeline that made no sense. I'd seen interns put more structure into their pitches. I sent a polite but firm reply. Hi, Eric. Thanks for sending this through. I'll review with my team on Monday and circle back with notes. Best, Adam. He responded within 5 minutes. Appreciate it, man. Hope I don't give you too much homework this time. Homework. The word choice made me smirk despite myself. That weekend, I found myself thinking back to college, to that one night in particular, a rain-soaked Thursday when I almost dropped my night class. We'd been studying for a midterm, and I was exhausted from working a double shift. My hands were still raw from stacking pallets, and the last thing I wanted was another 2 hours under fluorescent lights. Eric had been at a bar with friends, texting me photos of pictures and wings. Come live a little, Professor. You're not getting paid to suffer. I almost listened to him. Almost. But something inside me refused. Maybe pride, maybe spite. I went to class anyway. That exam later turned into a scholarship recommendation from the professor who noticed my consistency. It opened the door to the job that started everything that followed. Sometimes your entire life changes because you showed up when someone else laughed. Monday morning, I reviewed his proposal line by line. It was salvageable, but the budgeting section was a mess. I marked my edits in red, wrote comments in the margins. By noon, I sent it back with a note. Eric, reviewed your proposal. See attached with comments. mainly around budget and reporting sections. Let me know if you'd like to set up a quick call to go over details. Best, Adam. He replied almost instantly again. Let's hop on a call. You're the boss now. Might as well hear me grovel in real time. How's 3 p.m.? I sighed, half amused. Sure, I typed. At 3 sharp, his face appeared on my screen, webcam slightly angled, light bouncing off the window behind him. Man, déjà vu, he said. You sitting there all official, me trying not to mess up. Let's just walk through the budget, I said, keeping it light. He laughed. Always straight to business. That's the Adam I remember. We went through the numbers. He was rusty, but not helpless. Somewhere between jokes, I caught glimpses of sincerity. The way he paused to ask real questions, the effort in his voice. At the end, he said, You know, I used to think people who took night classes were running from something, but maybe they were running towards something instead. The words landed quietly. Maybe, I said. Depends who's asking. He smiled, but his eyes flicked down, unfocused. Guess I'm finding that out late. For a few months, things stayed cordial. Our teams worked together occasionally. His emails became more professional, less defensive. I started to think maybe he was turning things around. Then came the client incident. One Thursday afternoon, Denise called me into her office. She looked irritated, but not surprised. Did you see this? She asked, sliding her laptop toward me. On the screen was an email chain between Eric and a client, a small manufacturer we'd just onboarded. He'd promised them a 15% budget reduction on services without approval. The problem was that discount didn't exist. The client had copied upper management, expecting confirmation. Is he allowed to do that? Denise asked. Not without finance sign-off, I said. That's what I thought. Can you handle the response? You've worked with him before. I nodded. When I called Eric that evening, his voice was casual, unaware. Hey man, what's up? Eric, did you offer a discount to Crestline Manufacturing? He paused. Maybe? They were hesitant to sign. I figured it'd help close the deal. Without approval? It's not a big deal, right? We can just adjust the contract later. Not really how it works, I said evenly. Finance is already asking questions. He exhaled. Okay, I'll fix it. You'll need to email the client. Copy me and Denise. Clarify the miscommunication. He hesitated again. You're serious? Yeah, Eric. This could mess up the account. Silence. Then a quiet, got it. The next day, the email went out. Polite, brief, apologetic. The client accepted the correction. Crisis averted, for now. But word travels fast in corporate circles. Denise mentioned that Downtown's director wasn't thrilled. One more like that, she said, and he's done. I nodded, but didn't comment. Over the next month, I noticed something changing in Eric's tone. His emails got shorter. His jokes, rarer. When we crossed paths during meetings, he kept things strictly business. Then, on a random Thursday, he showed up at headquarters. I spotted him in the hallway near the elevators, holding a manila folder. Hey, I said, surprised. Didn't know you were in today. He shrugged. Had to drop some reports off in person. Figured I'd say hi. We stood there, the hum of the vending machine filling the silence. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, tie slightly crooked. You holding up okay? I asked. He laughed softly. You mean after I almost tanked a client account? Yeah, I'm surviving. You fixed it. Barely. He looked down at the folder in his hand. You ever feel like you're running out of chances before anyone else even starts keeping score? The question caught me off guard. Sometimes, I said quietly. But that's when you start doing the right things, even if no one's watching. He smiled faintly.
You really turned out to be the wise one, huh? Not wise, I said. Just learned the hard way. He nodded. Guess that's next on my list. The next few weeks were quiet again. Then, out of nowhere, Denise called me on a Wednesday afternoon. You might want to see this, she said. She forwarded me an email from HR. The subject line made my stomach sink. Subject: Incident Report, Downtown Division. It outlined an internal complaint: misuse of company resources, possible falsified expense entries. The name attached was his, Eric Nolan. I sat there, staring at the report. It was light on details, just that the finance team had flagged discrepancies in receipts and reimbursement forms, meals logged under dates without meetings, travel expenses tied to non-existent client visits. When I called Denise back, she said, "They're auditing it now. Might just be sloppy bookkeeping, but HR's taking it seriously." Does he know yet? I think they're calling him in tomorrow. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. After the call, I walked to the window. The sky outside had turned the color of graphite, and rain streaked the glass in uneven lines. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was something heavier, like watching a slow replay of a moment you've already lived, when someone makes the same choice you once did, only worse. That night, around 9, my phone buzzed. A text. Eric, you ever get the feeling life's trying to even a score you didn't know existed? I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Me, what happened? Eric, don't worry about it. Just one of those weeks. Me, HR called you in? He didn't reply for a while. Then, Eric, you hear everything, huh? Guess being the company guy comes with perks. I started to type something defensive, then deleted it. Me, I'm not against you, Eric. Eric, nah, just ahead, always have been. The dots blinked like he might say more. Then nothing. I set my phone down and sat in the dark, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator again, the same hum that always seemed louder when something in my life shifted. I didn't know what would happen at HR the next day, but I had a feeling that whatever it was, it wouldn't end. Quietly. The next morning, the office felt quieter than usual. The rain from the night before had turned into a fine mist, the kind that clung to the windows and blurred the skyline. People spoke in lowered voices, their footsteps soft on the carpeted floors. You could tell when something was about to happen. The air carried that strange, static heaviness. By 9 o'clock, HR had already called Eric in. I wasn't part of the meeting, but word traveled fast. Someone from the downtown division texted me. He's in with legal and finance. Looks bad. I didn't reply. I sat at my desk, watching the clock hands crawl. At 10:15, the conference room door opened. I caught a glimpse through the glass. Eric walking beside an HR rep, jaw tight, folder clutched in his hand. His eyes didn't lift. They led him straight past the open workspace, down the hall toward the exit. Nobody said a word. When the door closed behind him, the room exhaled. I didn't see him for a week. Not at the downtown branch, not online, not in any of the channels we used for interdepartment communication. His account was deactivated quietly, the way companies handle people they don't want to embarrass publicly. Denise mentioned later that finance had confirmed the expense irregularities, a couple $1,000s misfiled as client dinners, none of them real. He didn't fight it, she said, just took the termination notice and left. Did he explain? Not really. Said something about needing to make things work. That was it. I nodded, unsure what to say. She sighed. I almost feel bad. He seemed like he was trying. He was. That's what made it worse. A few weeks later, I got another message, this time from an unknown number. Eric, you were right about doing the right thing even when no one's watching. I should have listened. I stared at the screen for a while before replying. Me, where are you? Eric, don't worry, not in trouble. Just trying to start over. Me, that's good. Starting over isn't the same as failing. Eric, tell that to the people who don't call back. The message hung there, gray and small, like a last word that didn't want to echo. I typed, "You'll figure it out," but never sent it. Spring rolled in. Work picked up. The company expanded and I got promoted. Another title, another set of responsibilities that blurred one day into the next. But every so often, I'd think about him. About that night class 8 years ago, the one I almost skipped. About the bar where he joked that I was wasting my 20s behind a desk. About the way his laughter used to fill the gaps in conversations. I'd see someone on the subway wearing a jacket like his and feel that familiar twinge, guilt mixed with distance. It's strange how people can become mirrors for your old life. It was almost a year later when I saw him again. I was walking downtown after a client meeting, coffee in hand, when a voice called my name. Adam! I turned. There he was, thinner, cleaner around the edges somehow. The usual smugness was gone, replaced by something steadier. Eric, I said, didn't expect... Yeah, he interrupted, grinning faintly. Most people don't. He wore a dark jacket, no tie, a laminated badge clipped to his chest. Community outreach volunteer, Shelter Works. You working here? I asked. Sort of. Helping with employment training. I teach resume writing and interview prep to folks coming out of bad breaks. There was irony in that sentence, but not the kind you could laugh at. That's good, I said. Really good. He nodded. It's steady, feels honest, I guess. We walked a block together, talking about small things, traffic, baseball, the rent. But beneath it, I could hear something deeper, a quiet acceptance in his voice. I thought I'd hate starting over, he said finally. Turns out it's not that bad once you stop comparing it to where you thought you'd be. I smiled. You sound like you're doing okay. He shrugged. Depends on the day, but I'm learning. The light changed. He turned toward the crosswalk. Hey, he said before leaving, those night classes, you still think they were worth it? I looked at him for a moment, the crowd moving around us. Yeah, I said, more than I realized back then. He smiled, nodded once, and crossed the street. I stood there, watching him disappear into the crowd, one face among hundreds, another story quietly closing its loop. That night, I drove home through the soft orange haze of the city. The radio hummed low, static between songs. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the windshield. Older, calmer, maybe a little lonelier. I thought about how easy it had been to hate him once, to let his mockery turn into motivation, his failure into validation. But somewhere along the way, the scoreboard stopped mattering. He wasn't the guy who mocked me anymore, and I wasn't the kid who needed to prove him wrong. We were just two men who'd learned, in very different ways, that time doesn't erase people. It humbles them. When I got home, I sat in the parked car for a moment, engine ticking softly. The dashboard clock read 7:42. Outside, the rain had started again. Soft, persistent, the kind that never really stopped, just waited for you to notice. I thought about messaging him, saying something simple like, "Good to see you doing well." But I didn't. Some things didn't need words. Instead, I walked inside, turned on the kitchen light, and poured myself a glass of water. The refrigerator hummed quietly, same as always. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't sound lonely. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.